everyone, and welcome back to my channel True Crime and Trials, where I discuss true crime and trials. My name's Lindsay and I am carrying on with the Robert Durst trial. I will be carrying on with this until early August. I think the state has managed to cut out a couple of witnesses, so that's shortened it down a bit. I'm very close. I'm a couple of witnesses short of catching up because of them reading out all of the Galveston trial and then showing all good things. It's given me a chance to catch up. Also, Robert Durst will be testifying, so that will be so interesting. It's very hard to hear him when he does speak up, so not sure how that's going to go, but I'm sure Mr. Lewin is chomping at the bit to cross-examine him, so I'm really looking forward to that. So next up is Susan Giordano. Now, she's another crazy lady, friend of Bob Durst's. You thought Jean Clark was bad? I mean, this is just another bizarre one. So as usual, Mr. Lewin asks if she's a close friend of Bob's, is she going to be unbiased? And she says yes, she is very close to Bob. She says she is an unbiased witness, and she says even if one of her children was on trial, she would still be unbiased. Okay. So currently, she says Bob is a very dear friend, even though they don't talk that much now. You will find out why he is a very dear friend later. Again, the only word I can think of to describe any of this is just bizarre. And she makes it clear that they have never had a romantic relationship and their friendship was always purely platonic. In numerous phone calls, see, this is where it turns a bit now, she has had with Bob, they have talked about spending the rest of their lives together, living together in the same house, but she still says their relationship is platonic. Susan did in fact tell Jarecki and Smerling that she was the closest one to Bob. Don't know. She has a lawyer present with her, and it's Bob's money that's paying for it, of course. He seems to be paying for all the lawyers for his friends that are testifying. Susan and Bob met through Nick Chavin when she worked at the same ad agency. She says at the time she really wanted to meet Bob, and at the time she was 21 and Bob was 44. She says she didn't know how wealthy he was, which Mr. Lewin is really struggling to believe. And I think most people will be like, really? You really didn't know that he was extremely wealthy? She swears she didn't know Bob was part of the Durst organisation and how much money he had. She and Bob didn't end up dating. She reconnected with him when she wrote to him when he was in Galveston in 2002-2003, and in the letter she asked him if he was interested in writing a book and telling his story. Bob wrote back and asked her questions about what she had written previously. He asked her questions about Nick. Susan did travel to Galveston and visited him maybe 4 times. Bob paid for the trips and sometimes her family would also go with her. At this point, Susan had been divorced, had kids and remarried. Her husband never went with her. But her husband did know that she had previous interests in Bob, but he was okay with her going. Bob paid for baseball tickets for her sons while they were in Galveston. He's such a generous guy. When she visited him, she says they just had general chit-chat. She never asked him about any of his past because he hadn't agreed to the book yet. Otherwise, she would have. Before he was arrested in Galveston, she and Bob were emailing back and forth, and Susan had said to him that there was a house next to her that he could live in. She said something about him being really ill in Texas and she wanted to look after him. Susan says that over the years, Bob has given her $300,000. Bob also paid her bills. Her attorney had asked her to pass her bills to him and then they got paid. So the amount is more than $300,000. The $300,000 was actually a lump sum check Bob had sent her before he was arrested in Galveston, which she knew was coming because Bob had told her. Susan didn't tell investigators about the check. She says no one asked her, so she wasn't withholding information, which, fair enough. I mean, I don't think you'd, like, when investigators came round, I don't think you'd blurt out, oh, by the way, gave me $300,000. Maybe if they'd have asked her, she probably would have. Her understanding is that the $300,000 check was for her son's schooling, for her bills, and for her to start afresh. Oh, and also for a house for Bob. Susan wanted some of that money to be a loan and that her sons should pay back some of it, but Bob wanted it to be a gift. She says her sons paid back $2,000 and Susan never paid anything back. But in a prior interview Susan had, she said the total amount she was given was $350,000, but now she has been reminded, she now remembers that it was more than $300,000. Susan had spoken to Bob while he was in prison about money and her passing her bills to her lawyer for them to be paid, and Mr. Lewin asked her if on the 30th of September 2016 Bob had said to his lawyers to give her as much money as she wanted to do what she wanted, which she doesn't remember. So guess what? Mr. Lewin has a clip, and you can see here the conversation they had where Bob said those words. So the total amount of money was near $338,000. Right. So Bob was giving her money for a property for her to develop that they could both live in. Bob had also told her that he wanted to support her and pay all her debts. They referred to the house they were going to live in together as their love nest. You can see this in the transcript from their phone call while Bob was in prison, but she still says that their relationship was and still is purely platonic. She says that saying love nest is their way of saying a home. I mean, have any of you guys called your home a love nest with a friend? Nobody on this planet ever uses the word love nest for a house that you're going to be living together in with a friend. It's just no. So when Bob fled after episode 5 aired on the Jinx, Bob called her from New Orleans to ask her to send luggage he had in New York and to also put some clothes and things in it for him. But then we move on from that and we move to a different subject that involves $30,000 and a second car for her son, which you can see here. And Susan isn't looking good here at all in my eyes after reading that. And as you can see, Bob is telling her that this could be seen as a bribe. So obviously Mr. Lewin asks what kind of second car for her son was going to cost $30,000. Susan says it wasn't all for the car, it was for other things too, which they had discussed prior. Now, we go back to the New Orleans and when Bob was in New Orleans and he had asked Susan to send him some clothes, more specifically winter clothes. Susan assumed he was coming back to New York from New Orleans and he wanted some winter clothes to put on for when he got back there because it was around March. There were 2 suitcases. One was red, one was green, and she says that she put in a couple of shirts, a sweater, some shoes in the red one. Then Mr. Lewin shows her the next picture, and this is what also was found inside the suitcase underneath the clothes. Numerous envelopes which contained roughly $115,000. She assumes it was in there because she didn't put them in there, so she assumed they were already in there. And this is the money found in the suitcase Susan packed and sent to Bob that she had no clue was in there. She says her excuse is that it was dark and she was in a rush and she didn't look through everything. But surely if she hadn't seen anything, she would have felt that it was really heavy to be an empty suitcase. But this next thing, it's like, what? She sent it to a different name, one of his aliases, which she didn't think was bizarre either. I mean, what is wrong with these people? The other suitcase, which is a green one, she didn't send. And Susan was interviewed by Joe Becerra 2 days after she sent the suitcase, and she didn't tell him about it. Good Lord. Susan doesn't recall telling Jarecki and Smerling that Bob had called her from Galveston and said that he was not with anyone when Susan was murdered. But he has to be with someone because he was not where everyone thought he was on the night Susan was murdered. Mr. Lewin also asked her if she told them that Bob said he has to still be with someone because it will make it go away. Susan says she might have said that, but Bob didn't say it to her. So she did say it, but it was a mistake. Susan also doesn't remember saying that she said in response to Bob that he had nothing to worry about if he wasn't at the scene of Susan's murder. She doesn't remember it, but she might have said it. Now it comes out that Susan told investigators that she thought it was odd that Bob needed to say he was with someone. Then a recording is played of an interview Susan had with Mr. Lewin where he asked her if she remembers saying to Bob something to the effect of, "Hey, listen, Bob, I can't say you were with me. I was at Christmas with 30 people. They're going to know you weren't there." Susan denies it and says Bob never asked her for an alibi. It all sounds dodgy, right? I mean, now we hear more of what Bob has said about Emily Altman, and after hearing this, I feel even worse for the poor woman. So a clip is played of a phone call where Susan and Bob are discussing Emily, and it says, "Bob, and I do believe that when this finally gets to trial in a year or so, maybe literally sooner than a year or so, the DA will not be able to use any of this because she sounds like such a nitwit. And we're going to be saying that you're not the kind of person that somebody would confide crucially important information to, are you?" Then Susan replies, "You're right, because I was going to tell you. I went online and the LA Times for 3 days changed the story because she kept changing her story. You know, I don't know. She looks so confused. From July 25th, July 26th and July 27th. She is not consistent. She's a mess." Poor Emily. This was played because Susan was asked if she had looked up anything about Emily testifying, and she said she hadn't, when it turned out she had. When she found out about Bob dismembering Maurice Black, she told Jarecki or Smerling that nobody would know what they would have done in that situation. Oh, God. I'm sure the majority of the population, in Bob's situation, would not have dismembered someone. You've got to have a sick mind to do that. I mean, what? Susan didn't know that Bob was going to leave $5 million to her in his will. So the cross-examination. Susan never knowingly did anything illegal for Bob in exchange for money. When Bob would speak about Kathy to Susan, she says he would speak very fondly of her. He would tell her about all the things they would do together. Bob encouraged her to speak to Jarecki. I mean, he told most of his friends to speak to Jarecki, even though she didn't really want to. Like you heard with Emily and Stuart, Emily, especially said she didn't want to do it, but Bob convinced her to do it. Nick Chavin never told her that Bob confessed to killing Susan Berman. Nick never told her anything negative about Bob. Is she being truthful? I don't think she is. Redirect. So we found out that the total amount of money that Bob has given Susan is near to $500,000. So there we go. That's it for Susan. Another crazy friend of Bob that he's given a massive amount of money to. So you know where the state is going with this, that he's paying off all these people to not say anything. So there we go. I'll be back with more in the next video. So until then, bye for now.